Hello and what's up, political peeps? Per usual, I am your host, Arav Kapoor, and for a second time, I am joined by the Fairfield Public Schools Superintendent, Mr. Michael J. Testani. Mr. Testani, welcome back to my show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I apologize we couldn't connect a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to make it a priority to get back here on the GeoPolitical and spend some time with you.
Thank you so much. Yes, looking forward to getting into the Fairfield Public Schools budget, immigration, and a couple other issues that pertain to Fairfield Public Schools. You were actually my second ever interview on my show. Since then, I've done so many more interviews, but it's really meaningful and cool to have you back on. So, like I mentioned, I did speak to you before. In that interview, we talked about your story, your time at the University of Bridgeport, you as a school counselor, and your progression to becoming the superintendent at Bridgeport Public Schools and then Fairfield Public Schools. So, to the audience, please check out that interview to learn more about Mr. Testani's past. But for now, let's get right to the business. Mr. Superintendent, earlier this year you proposed an education budget that was 6.45% higher than the previous fiscal year's budget. Following this, the Board of Education added $500,000 to this plan, which led to a total education budget that was 6.68% higher than the previous year's education budget. So, just for people who don't know, can you kind of take me through the processes on screen right now? The process of pitching your budget to the Board of Education, and then going through the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the first Selectman's office, and ultimately the RTM to get your budget approved. Tell me more about that process and how it goes for you.
Sure. So we start looking early in the fall to build the budget for the following year. I meet extensively with all our departments, our school building leaders, to talk a little bit about some of the things that they think they may need. We talk about some of the things that they would no longer need if there's items or staffing or those kind of things that they could potentially reduce in order to afford anything new. So we really try to make sure that upon adding, if there's any potential reductions that can go along with it. So we're not just continually adding more and more to the budget. We want to be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers of Fairfield.
Right.
So we proposed the budget to the Board of Education. As you mentioned, sometimes the board has some things that they would like to see, which could, as it did this year, increase the budget. We then go back to the drawing board. We kind of refine some things so that the ask is within reason. And then we present that. We have some talks with the town folks about what the budget potentially is going to look like. And as you could see, the first selectman's budget did reduce the Board of Education significantly this year.
Right.
Once that happens, we go back to the Board of Ed. We try to make some reductions to see where we can potentially save some money. We were successful in the Board of Selectmen as a body restoring $2 million back into the budget that was reduced by the first selectmen's overall budget. As you can see, we were also successful in the Board of Financing, restoring $1 million to the budget as well. The RTM does not have the ability to restore any money, but they do have the ability to reduce further, which they did not this year. They successfully then, and the budget did pass, which left us with a gap. Part of the gap was about $1 million was covered through some projects that we wanted to get done at some of our schools. So there was money that was bonded for that.
Right.
So that left us with about $900,000 in a shortfall that we're currently working through to reduce the budget by that $900,000 or so without having any impact on our classrooms and our programs for students like yourself.
Right. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And I will get to the possible effects of that budget decrease in just a few moments. But for now, tell me more about the proposed increase, 6.45%. What factors can you overall tell me that led to you and then the Board of Education proposing a budget that was increased by more than any other town department increased their budget?
Sure. So a couple of things that contributed to that. Number one, we have a new teacher's contract and a new administrator's contract that was negotiated, which did provide increases in salaries to both of those, which make up significant part of our staffing. For many, many years, those two collective bargaining units, the teachers union and the administrators union, lagged behind our in competitive salaries with our neighboring districts here in Fairfield County. So we made some gains in closing the gap there.
Right.
We also had a 7-year transportation contract that began in 2018 that was expiring. As you can imagine, a lot has increased in costs since 2018, just in general. So that contributed to a significant increase to the transportation budget. And then we experienced a little higher than anticipated increase in healthcare costs. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell when you come down to the increase. It was nothing new that we were adding to the budget. We didn't add any new staffing or any new programs. It was really trying to maintain what we currently have, but just trying to catch up on some old contracts in transportation that needed to be renewed, and the transportation provider for a student was just getting more competitive with the market costs. And again, trying to be more competitive in retaining our talented teaching staff and our administrative staff.
Right, and the $500,000 that the Board of Education added to your original proposed budget, that was for the first student contract. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was, and then we got better, we got more increased numbers later on.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we can attribute some of the increases to the 2.9% national inflation average. Now, I do want to touch on something that our first selectman, Mr. Gerber, who's joined my show as well, talked about. 73% of your Fairfield Public Schools budget went to staffing benefits and staff salaries. So he originally mentioned a criticism concerning teachers and other staff members and administrators being able to take online classes to increase their pay. He later came back and took back this criticism, saying that it was unfounded and that he wasn't fully informed. Talk to me more about teachers gaining more degrees and working their way up the pay scale, and how that will continue to possibly increase the budget in coming years.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, correct. There's in any teacher's contract, based on your advanced degree level, you will be paid at a higher level than you would if you had not earned that advanced degree. This was a way for some teachers to go and better educate themselves, become more skillful at their position, and provide more to their students. And in doing so, by going out and taking additional coursework, when they achieve 30 credits beyond the current degree that they currently hold, they get a bump in pay. So I think it was pretty clear cut. It was all negotiated in the contract. We had a number of teachers that took advantage of that. But we're already seeing that because of that big bump initially, because there was a lag of time that teachers weren't able to do that from the 6th year to what they call the 7th year lane, because it was closed off. And from the time the contract was negotiated and signed off back in the fall of 23, it gave a significant period of time for people to get out there and go back to school. I think now that you'll see a return to normal numbers where it won't be as significant of an increase moving forward.
But if staff members and administrators and teachers continue to work for degrees, do you see the budget increasing by this 6.5% approximately in upcoming fiscal years for the budget? Or, like you mentioned, do you expect that increase to not be as drastic in coming years?
Yeah, I think it'll significantly go down simply because once they reach a certain point, like they have, there is nowhere else for them to go to increase their salaries. There's not another what we call another lane of degree. It
Mhm.
caps out at seventh year.
Right.
We did have a big number of folks that took advantage of the time and going back to school. We anticipate by what we've seen in the last several months for next year that this will drop off significantly.
Right. Sounds good. Now, I do want to transition. We mentioned this before when you were originally breaking down the budget process for me. Approximately $1.9 million was not recovered since the first selectman removed $4.8 million from the Board of Education's original budget, kind of emphasizing the fact that if a department isn't pressured, they'll never make cuts. He said that in in the original Board of Selectmen meeting, where they restored $2 million to the Board of Education budget. But just talk to me about that. You mentioned $1 million we would be getting from state funding for other projects, but that approximately $900,000. How is that going to affect students, and how are you working to mitigate harmful effects towards education?
Well, we're trying to see in what other areas we could potentially reduce the budget without impacting any staffing. So we're committed to not impacting any further staff reductions. We're committed to not eliminating any programs. So we're looking at a variety of places. We are pretty lean in terms of trying to be responsible in our budgeting. So I think the assumption that we need pressure to reduce the budget is not a fair statement. I think my first priority is to try to also be responsible to the taxpayers of Fairfield,
Right.
but also be mindful that we need to provide students like yourself all the opportunities to explore, educate, and be successful and prepare themselves for life beyond Fairfield Public Schools.
Right. So that's very important. Taking into account the taxpayer, like you mentioned, that was your number one priority. The mill rate
After students.
the mill rate in Fairfield is going up this year. Do you think that is something that will continue to happen as the budget from other town departments continue to go up? The mill rate increase, and what do you see in that for next year's budget?
Well, we're going to do our part to try to be as responsible as possible. I think, until there's a way to find other revenue sources for the town, that you're going to continue to see taxes go up. But at the same time, we're also seeing the value of homes go up. So it's not that we're paying more taxes for a property that's worth less. We're paying more taxes on a property that does have higher value. So as a taxpayer and a homeowner here in Fairfield, I feel good that we're investing a significant part of our budget in public schools. We're investing in our future, which is the children of Fairfield. And I think that is a good investment, well worth the increase in the mill rate.
Yeah, and of course, the Board of Education's budget is a small but important part of the overall town budget, which did increase by approximately 3.1% this year. I do want to transition to that. Different parts of the community in Fairfield and beyond seem to have different priorities when it comes to education funding and just where to put the money for the town's budget. Like I mentioned, it increased by 3.1% this year. How do you respond to differing views, and how will you persuade them and emphasize the importance of education for students like myself and my peers?
Well, I respect that people do have their own views and opinions. I think we can't discount them. Everyone has a voice here in town as to where they think their money should go. And I think that's important as part of the democratic process. But at the same time, I would say that there's no greater investment that we can make into the future of our children. And
Correct.
we are living in a very competitive world. The job market now is just not here domestically, but it's globally. And we're losing a lot of jobs overseas. And I think it's important that we have a very highly skilled labor force that can contribute, as more and more jobs, as we can see, are trying to be brought back to the United States. It's going to take a skilled workforce to be able to perform those jobs. And it's not going to be me. I'm going to be too old. So it's going to be folks like yourself that are going to need to be prepared for whatever comes into the ever-changing job market.
Right. Super important. And thank you so much for kind of discussing the budget with me. I want to move on from the budget. Very important topic, but I have a couple other things I want to touch on for the duration of our interview. You recently sent a message concerning the federal immigration changes for Fairfield Public Schools. Why did you feel like this was an important email to send out? And tell me more about how Fairfield Public Schools will handle immigration issues, possible encounters with ICE, etc. Just give me an overview of your view on that.
Well, I think there was a lot of folks in town that were concerned about, things that were happening nationwide. They weren't really clear on how it would affect them and their families. So I just wanted to make sure that they understand that we're here. We're here to support folks that are immigrants. I am the product of an immigrant family, so I understand that people are concerned. But at the same time, I think we live in a good town here. We have people that are here to support. I don't think there's anything that our families need to worry about, especially when it comes to sending their children to school. At the same time, we will follow the law. We're not going to be a hindrance to law enforcement, but at the same time, we're not going to open up our schools to allow people to come in and have encounters with children. These are, you're under our care while you're in our buildings and on our property, and we will do everything we can to protect you.
Right. And in the email, you emphasized the Connecticut Trust Act, which ICE can't enter school buildings without a valid judicial warrant. But, through your emphasis on this, and it's been talked about throughout the nation, actually, there's been some concern that school districts may be I'm not particularly mentioning Fairfield. I just want your response to this as a national issue as a superintendent in Fairfield. And if it applies to Fairfield, that's important as well. Some community members have been concerned that school districts may be doing too much to shield undocumented families. What's your response to people who feel that the district is prioritizing these undocumented students over transparency and overall national security coming with the new administration in Washington?
Well, I just have to say that we're here to protect all students. These are children. If there was anyone that, could be a child that is connected to a parent or a family member that is a threat to our country, then I think that's, something that needs to be dealt with law enforcement and those individuals. But I think the children are innocent in all of this, and we need to do our part to make sure they feel safe when they come to school.
Yes, the children are innocent. That's a very important point that you make there. Now, I will transition to talk more about artificial intelligence in school buildings. Fairfield Public Schools hasn't really, as a student at Fairfield Woods Middle School, adopted artificial intelligence. There's bans on platforms such as ChatGPT, Perplexity, OpenAI, etc., on school devices using school Wi-Fi. How will Fairfield Public Schools integrate artificial intelligence in? I know that's a conversation that you will possibly be having and maybe have even had with curriculum leaders, how to implement that into education, etc. But talk to me more about your overall view on artificial intelligence implementation in Fairfield.
It's a great question. So we have a committee that's been working on this over the last 8 months. We will have some guidelines in place for appropriate usage for teachers and staff, and also for students for the upcoming school year. As you mentioned, artificial intelligence is here. It's important that we embrace it. We utilize it appropriately when we can. But if we think for 1 second we're going to defeat it or we're going to circumvent the use of artificial intelligence, we are sadly mistaken, because it is here. It is ever changing. I do think that we're going to do our best to try to stay as current as possible. I don't know if that's even possible to do. I think the experts are having a hard time keeping
Mhm.
up with the evolution of artificial intelligence. But we will be releasing for the start of the school year some guidelines around appropriate usage within our schools.
So, do you, like I mentioned before, artificial intelligence platforms are blocked on Fairfield Public Schools Wi-Fi. Do you plan to see that change going into the 25-26 school year with these guidelines going into place?
I think that's one of the things that that's being considered is how we can allow those to be used and what safeguards we can put in place to protect children.
Yeah, because ultimately, my view on this is that sadly, even though we are blocking artificial intelligence in school and not giving children a safe way or understood way to use artificial intelligence to help with their schoolwork, for example, but you're not giving them any guidelines around it. So if they are to go use artificial intelligence at home, for example, they're more likely to go and complete a whole assignment on using ChatGPT, for example, rather than using artificial intelligence appropriately with the permission of their teacher to supplement the work that they're currently doing and continue the growth of the school. So I just think that's really important, and what the committee is doing, I think, I look forward to seeing that work implemented next school year.
Absolutely.
And I also want to talk about continuing on the topic of technology in schools. Um, how do you work to mitigate dangerous internet trends? Like you mentioned, technology is here, artificial intelligence is here. On TikTok, there was a recent super scary and dangerous trend of people sticking conductive material into their Chromebooks, USB ports, and under keys and stuff, and causing the Chromebooks to smoke. The Fairfield Police Department talked to students at school about that. What's your response to mitigating these kind of dangerous things happening in your schools?
I think we try to educate students and parents as best as possible when these things
Mhm.
begin to show up on the internet. We have a good team of folks that are monitoring things, and I have a good network of other superintendents in other districts that we share information on a regular basis to see if anything is happening somewhere else that could potentially be uh, coming to Fairfield. So I think it's really about education and prevention. As you know, as a student in a middle school, kids are going to be kids sometimes, and no matter how much we educate, no matter how much we warn them, curiosity sometimes takes over, and we deal with those instances as they pop up. But try to be as proactive as possible to provide as much education and information to students and parents as possible to generate conversations, not just at school, but also at home.
Yeah, that's very important. I walked into a classroom, math class actually, and there was like somebody said there was smoke here, and I was like, "What is this?" But I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and you've sent a couple emails about the social media trend, and I think the way that this is being handled by public schools actually across the nation have had evacuations due to trends like this. It's very important. And I have one more question for you. Given
Sure.
that your job can be a thankless one at best oftentimes, what's one accomplishment that you had at FPS that didn't necessarily make the headlines? It makes the headlines when there's people, blowing up, causing Chromebooks to smoke, and budgets are going on. But what's one thing that you're really proud of that FPS accomplished that didn't make the headlines necessarily?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of thus far in the last few years is that we have successfully moved the district from into a new literacy program that I think long term is going to have great impact on the teaching and learning of students when it comes to reading.
Okay.
It was a big undertaking, and it took the help of hundreds of teachers and leadership here in the district. But I'm very proud that we were able to make that shift. We are one of the first school districts in the state, at this part of the state at least, when the state changed their guidelines and requirements. Instead of fighting it, we embraced it. We prepared very methodically and carefully. And it was the end of the first year that we're using the new literacy program, especially in elementary school.
Mhm.
And I think we're seeing some positive results already, and I think they're just going to grow from there.
Just curious, how do you monitor those results with the new reading programs, especially in elementary schools?
Just, through assessments to see how comparatively kids are doing from the beginning of the school year to the middle to the end of the school year. And then year over year, how those students continue to grow as they progress through our school district.
Okay, anything else you want to say before we wrap up our conversation here, Mr. Testani?
Well, I am so happy to be here and be participating in the GeoPolitical for the second time. I'm happy to be a repeat guest, and I'm happy to come back anytime to talk about anything pressing or anything you'd like to talk about. And it's great to see you. I see that you've grown in the podcast, and I'm looking forward to see this go nationwide eventually. This could be big. It could be the next Joe Rogan experience here.
Yeah, your wishes are so meaningful, and having a superintendent willing to come interact with students like myself, it's super meaningful. And this was a great conversation. Like you mentioned, would love to have you back again in a few months or a year or so. Talk more about whatever's up and coming in public schools throughout the country. So, Mr. Testani, thank you so much for joining me today. Political peeps, thank you so much for watching. Peace out.
Peace out.